Hello, everyone, and welcome to this new episode of Open Book Entrepreneur. I'm here with Andre Walton, and he's basically a social psychologist, also coach, and helping people with burnout as well. So, Andre, please introduce yourself to our audience.
Thank you very much, Tony, and I appreciate you inviting me on your show. Um, yes, I'm a life and business coach. I'm certified and accredited, and I'm a social psychologist. That's I've been studying social psychology now for 25 years, and my main focus really is on creativity and innovation. I happen also to be the visiting professor of creativity and entrepreneurship at the Newport Business School. I have launched a new program that's related to burnout. I don't know how familiar you are with the problem that burnout presents, but just here in North America, it's a $1 trillion cost to the country. Two-thirds of all adult Americans either have had burnout or they have friends or colleagues that have burnout. So it's a major problem. I mean, just the medical costs alone are $250 billion a year. So it's a very big deal.
It's huge, huge, absolutely. I mean, I'm very familiar with burnout. I have a number of colleagues that experienced it as well. I do also sometimes feel overwhelmed with the amount of work and change and improvements that are required to actually, constantly stay on top of all the changes that are happening. So, yeah, I mean, what actually inspired you to get into this line of business, into this niche?
There were a number of things, really. I was an entrepreneur for 15 years. I took two of my crazy ideas to become global leaders in their field. And so, one strand of my DNA is in entrepreneurship. I did a lot of consulting when I sold my group of businesses. And one of the things I was doing was to help companies that had basically plateaued. Maybe they had started being very innovative, and then at some point that had just flattened out. And so, and that's quite common actually with new businesses that are built around a novel concept. They suddenly sort of turn around in a few years' time and realize that they're no longer very innovative. So I started working with companies that needed innovation in some way, either new product innovation or new marketing processes or globally new ways of distributing their products. And that I've always been fascinated by creativity. Both my parents were very creative. I'm a creative person. I've worked with a lot of creatives. And so I started to become very interested in this business innovation interface. And that led me to go back to school and do a PhD in social psychology, focused on organizational level creativity and innovation. And that over the last 20 years, that's evolved to a number of different things. And one of those things is the idea that we're born with a natural balance between the ways that we think. And quite often we lose the creative side of that balance. When due to socialization, due to, the structures that are imposed on us when we're at school and then later on at work. And so we tend to think very deductively and analytically here in the West as adults. And so we lose a sort of creative thinking process. And so I've developed a program where I help people reintegrate that creative thinking into our thinking processes. And it's a very simple process. It starts with just looking at your everyday activities. Maybe when you go to your local restaurant, you try something new on the menu. When you drive to work, maybe you take a different route. All these little things can help start to generate new neural pathways to how we view our world. And I started to integrate that idea into my coaching practice, and particularly with people that have stress and anxiety disorders, including burnout. And it was incredibly successful. Um, During the beta phase, one of my clients, he said, Andre, I've been going to therapy for 18 months. And yeah, maybe I feel a little bit better, but I've done more in the last 2 months working with you than the previous 18. And it's all about, when people get stressed and they get anxious, they go into what I call the hamster wheel effect. And they just literally go round and round and round. They're like a racehorse with blinders. All they can see is one thing ahead, and that thing is to do with their burnout, all anxiety related. So rather than the kind of traditional processes where you sort of gradually change people's thought patterns, my process actually generates new neural pathways, and these are along creative lines. So everybody was born creative. We have creative thinking. When we're a baby, we don't have the capacity to think logically or deductively because we've got no history. We're talking about a blank board. So being able to think in this different way is something we have all done. So it's actually not difficult to retrain people to introduce this into their thinking practice. And what happens then is that when people start to feel, very depressed, stressed, anxiety ridden, or other signs of burnout, they can practice going into this different neural pathway. And it's incredibly effective. And that neural pathway, by the way, it has been shown in fMRI studies, is the same neural pathway that's related to emotional intelligence. So when people are thinking, are actually applying emotional intelligence, that particular pathway lights up on the imaging, and that's the same pathway that lights up when we're thinking creatively.
So how long does it take for someone to actually learn how to actually build up or use this neural pathway?
Well, it's something that is you can certainly make headway with doing this on your own. But as a coach, I'm able to guide people to do this very much quicker than doing it on your own because of the processes involved. And there are a number of different ways you can do this. I mean, one is that you can start to help people focus on things that maybe they've done in the past that have some creativity related to them. Maybe they were in a garage band, maybe they journaled, maybe they wrote poetry, all sorts of things. And if you dig it enough, we've all done something that's got some creativity in it. And once you found that thing, maybe one of my clients recently used to be very involved in videography and loved it. And then that sort of got buried by his work. Well, we unburied it because of the anxiety that he was experiencing. And so, that became a way of channeling his energy. And the improvement he made just in 2 or 3 weeks was incredible because he found something. The brain is looking for something else to focus on when you're depressed or anxious or stressed out. The brain is looking for something different to think about, but it can't see it for these blinders. So this is giving people that. So my job as a coach is to help people find their creative trigger. And then once we've found that, we've got something to build on.
Exactly. And like, how long does it take you to actually find the creative trigger for your clients?
Um, it really depends a lot on the stage of burnout that the client is at. Um, Obviously, the deeper into burnout they're at, the more sort of hidden are those other elements. Typically, it will take me just maybe 2 sessions to find where we're going to go. And then another session to kind of put that into practice. So in the first three or four sessions, and my burnout program is actually two sessions per week. So within the first 2 to 3 weeks, a client will typically be seeing significant changes. And I do a well-being assessment at the very beginning and a well-being assessment at the end of each of the 4 weeks. And so, but typically within 2 to 3 weeks, a client will often see significant change. And what I also ask them to do is to have their partner, friends, family also be monitoring them in a very trivial way, so that they can then get positive feedback that what they're doing is appropriate. Because it's quite easy for people to sink into the notion that this is all feels good at this moment, but then when I walk out of the door, nothing happens. And that's not the case. And so it's nice for them to have that feedback.
And what are the typical sort of benefits for someone who actually manages to overcome burnout?
Well, I think that you've got the sort of basic burnout of getting past the sometimes very serious symptoms of burnout. I mean, typically, one of the things that will go very quickly is ability to sleep properly. People with severe burnout. I mean, sometimes people with severe burnout won't even sort of go to bed. They'll just sit on the couch and watch TV until they just doze off, and then at some point they'll wake up. So sleep is a very serious issue. The other issue, which can have a lot of social ramifications, it's to do with relationships. And people with burnout will often actually pull away from those people around them that could actually help them. And so you tend to find that relationships at work and at home begin to get very stressed with burnout. And so, all these symptoms, basically in the first week of sessions with me, I designed three custom-made packages. One is related to relationships, the second is related to recreation, and the third is related to work, because those are the three main areas where burnout really bites really deep. And so that gives you, and there are three areas that also utilize different neural pathways in the brain. So you're working in several different dimensions.
Mhm.
So with those custom packages, they're designed for each individual. I mean, they have common threads, but basically we're all different in those three domains. So that the client has got something concrete to work on, and they work on those three packages between sessions. And so when you see, and you'll see all three of those packages generate positive results. And you can see from that I'm looking there at the recreation will include physical activity. Even if that's just going out and walking the dog for 20 minutes, that's just getting the body moving. And also there's all sorts of positive things that come with like going for a walk. It's
Mhm.
not just because it feels good. It actually increases the corpus callosum, which is between the two halves of the brain. It increases that activity. So you actually have better transmission through the brain, which means everything that we're doing in terms of creating neural pathways happens more quickly.
Totally.
And so,
I agree 100%. So that's really really good idea. I mean, I always experience this when I have some really difficult situations in business or something else. Like I go for a walk around the lake, and it just helps massively. So exactly like you're saying, this connection in the brain becomes so strong that I'm able to really find some solutions I didn't know they were even there. So 100%. So if someone wants to actually find out a little bit more about you or connect to you, or to learn more about your wisdom in these programs, how they can do that?
there is information on my website, which is planforchange.org. And that's plan and then the number four and then change. There is more information on that. And I'm very happy just for people to pick up the phone and text me or call me 775-232-3758, 775-232-3758. And then my email is dr.andre, A-N-D-R-E, at planforchange.org. So I really encourage people to contact me, just, even if they're interested. I love to talk about this stuff, and I'd like to spread the word to help people overcome this really serious and rapidly growing epidemic.
Totally. I mean, I will definitely share the link and those contact information in the description of this episode. And yeah, if before we go, if there is any question maybe that I didn't ask you, any tip or any wisdom that you would like to share with our audience, what would that be?
Well, I think the the bottom line really to all this work is work-life balance. But that's not just about giving more time to, say, your family than your work. It's not just about that. It's about a way of thinking. It's about, it's not uncommon to have a workaholic, indulging in a family experience, but actually only being partly there. They call it presenteeism. It's like absenteeism, but you're physically present. And it's the other thing that I think is important to realize is that the medical profession doesn't actually acknowledge the existence of burnout, which is incredible to me, but they just subsume it under stress. And so, and it's important to realize that stress, if you accurately define it, it is it is when you do not have the resources available to meet a challenge. That's what stress is. So you can have a situation that's stressful for one person with certain resources and not stressful for another. So it's a really very interesting kind of field. It's one I'm obviously passionate about, and it's a problem. Burnout represents a problem that's getting worse and worse and worse every year. And I appreciate, your media, such as your own podcast, that really, has an incredible reach. And I appreciate you being open to discussing, this kind of problem, which is fits right there in the niche of your entrepreneurship.
Totally,
But
totally.
is
It's
often
a huge
ignored.
problem. As I mentioned at the beginning of the recording of this episode, it's a huge problem that I see happening to a lot of entrepreneurs, even people just employed and other places. So, Andre, thank you so much for being a guest today. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for sharing your knowledge, and also thank you for sharing how you can help people as well with this burning subject. So thank you all for watching and listening. And if you liked it, drop us a like, subscribe, and also comment below. And we're looking forward also to your comments and seeing and answering those. Again, all the best, and see you in the next episode. Bye bye.
Thank you, Tony.